Language and Control, 1984 on A Clockwork Orange. Violence is normalized and minimized through the use of teenage vernacular in the opening section of A Clockwork Orange. Language relating to violent acts is often infantilized or made to seem childish. Phrases such as ultraviolence, as well as references to body parts such as Rooker's Zuby's rotten pot, all sound quite childish. The language itself is standardized, and controls and manipulates the reader's understanding by alienating them from the true violence that occurs in the opening chapters, as they attempt to adjust to the vernacular language used. However, the use of childish language has a similar effect on its speakers, as they view their actions as fun and without risk, as the childish language minimizes the severity of their actions. Language is similarly used in other dystopian and utopian novels to encourage desired behaviors. In Brave New World, the use of drugs is not only encouraged, but seen as sociable. Thus, society has been conditioned into using banal and infantilized comments to encourage others to conform, including phrases such as, "a gram is better than a dam." This is comparable to the consumption and abuse of drugs in A Clockwork Orange, which is normalized by the fact that it can be easily accessed and consumed in milk. The fact that it is milk that is laced with drugs is significant, as it demonstrates the extent to which natural innocence, symbolized by milk, which is representative of wholesomeness and childhood, has been corrupted. The distortion of childhood and innocence is also common to other dystopian and utopian texts. In 1984, children are encouraged to spy on their parents and report them to the authorities. Thus, the typical bond that is supposed to form within families is destroyed, ensuring that children are loyal instead to Big Brother and Oceania. They are also constantly conditioned through propaganda, to which they are more susceptible as children, and through organizations such as the Junior Spies. Equally, changes being made to the language that are discussed by Winston will ultimately affect the manner in which children think as well as speak, with the negation of words that might prompt betrayal or love for anything other than Big Brother. The children are being conditioned into total and unquestioning obedience. Alex's arrest and time in Starjar changes his use of language. His writing moves closer to standard English and becomes more understandable to the reader. In the second part of the novel, the reader is expected to become more sympathetic of Alex and his situation, and thus the language he uses is made easier to understand in order to facilitate the reader's sympathy. Compared to the opening of the novel, the opening of the second part is structurally similar. The refrain, "What's it gonna be then, eh?" is repeated, followed by a recounting of events or an introduction to the situation, and concluded with a description of Alex's clothing, as demonstrated in the quote. However, the language used changes significantly. The novel's opening is almost incomprehensible, as it is written entirely in teenage vernacular. The opening for the second part is far more easily understood. The effect of Alex's having been in jail for the last 2 years is that he has had to change his use of language in order to appear compliant. By the end of the second part, Alex has been reconditioned to feel physically sick at the thought of violence, which has in turn influenced the manner in which he uses language. When asked to demonstrate the results of his conditioning, Alex expresses himself in strictly standard English, speaking to his attacker politely and without the use of vernacular phrases. This suggests that, as in 1984, his conditioning prevents him from using words that would help him to formulate thoughts of violence. He can see images of violence, but these are immediately connected to feelings of physical illness. Comparatively, in 1984, Newspeak is an effective mechanism for control because it limits the vocabulary of its speakers, restricting the thoughts they are able to formulate linguistically as a result. Symes argues that Old Speak is full of useless shades of meaning, that a more precise and clinical language would be more efficient and just as beautiful because of its efficiency. However, the loss of scores of words would ultimately result in a less emotive language overall, which benefits the aims of the party and Big Brother, as people will be unable to express emotions adequately if they cannot articulate them. In turn, the lack of emotional language results in a loss of sentiment and strong emotions such as love, hate and loyalty, ultimately keeping the citizens of Oceania compliant through conditioning them to a position where they robotically accept all that they are told and given. Every year fewer and fewer words, and the range of consciousness always a little smaller. Even now, there is no reason or excuse for committing thought crime. The limitation of the human consciousness through language will eventually result in total obedience, to such an extent that loyalty is not required. Without the words to express disloyalty or dissent, loyalty is an unnecessary emotion. The limitation of the human consciousness through language will eventually result in total obedience, to such an extent that loyalty is not required. Without the words to express disloyalty or dissent, loyalty is unnecessary and can be replaced instead by conditioned obedience. By the final part of the novel, Alex has returned to speaking as he did in the opening of chapter of A Clockwork Orange. His use of the vernacular is as it was originally, effectively trapping him in the mindset of a teenaged boy despite the progress that has occurred in his absence, and, as he was easily conditioned before, so too can he be controlled again, thus making his vulnerable state of mind an asset to a government seeking to control its citizens. Proposing debilitating and will-sapping techniques of conditioning. Before we know where we are, we shall have the full apparatus of totalitarianism. Said by F. Alexander in conversation with Alex, his observations of the current regime suggest that the government is shifting towards one that is closer in nature to that of 1984. Alex is unable to properly understand his comments, however, as he has been conditioned to remain as he originally was, indicating that he is perhaps incapable of progressing intellectually beyond his current state. The regime in 1984 is already totalitarian in nature, and maintains its control over progress, determining the collective future of the citizens of Oceania. The systematic elimination of those capable of formulating thoughts of betrayal and hatred of Big Brother, specifically those of Winston's generation and slightly later, ensures that the party can control Oceania's future by controlling the manner in which they think and speak. In both texts, the future of each society is determined by the measures taken by the respective governments. However, both regimes seek to control the manner in which their citizens think. In both texts, the future of each society is determined by the measures taken by their respective governments. However, both regimes seek to control the manner in which their citizens think. This is common to both regimes, as is the notion that language and propaganda can be used to condition desired behaviour and erase instinct. This particular mechanism for control is common to the dystopian genre, from 20th century works such as Brave New World, 1984, and A Clockwork Orange, to more contemporary works such as Scott Westerfeld's The Pretties trilogy and the Divergent trilogy. Thank you for watching.